What's happening, everybody? Welcome back. This is Forgo, and generally it's actually really easy to decide which uniforms you want to buy. Sorry, everybody, not right now, because usually we just have one meta or one super strong character or maybe two characters in an update that are absolute must buys. However, with the Black Order update, every one of these characters uniforms just transcended them to a level beyond, right? Some of these characters have become metas, multiple characters have become metas, or they're just so damn strong that you might want them. Now, this is going to be more of a PvE understanding of these characters and where they're actually applicable, where you actually can use them. And I'm hoping that this is going to help some of you decide on which of these uniforms you should buy, especially after I've tested them, watched other YouTube videos, did a bit of research on all of these characters, their strengths and weaknesses. And the first thing about all these characters is that we have every one of them is a alien, I believe. Yeah, they're all aliens. And the thing about being all alien is all the Black Order alien characters. So that means in squad battle, they're not going to be very good in squad battle at all because there is no requirement for aliens. These are all humans or mutants. Really no restrictions. The only place you can actually use these characters. And there are just other characters that you would be better off using here if you're looking to get the highest score. So they're not really applicable here. However, when you start getting into ABX, that's where things get a little bit interesting for some of these characters. And in ABX, we have different seasons. We have female supervillain, we have speed supervillain, and we have universal supervillain game modes where certain ABX characters will apply. So in Proxima and Supergiant, those are both universal super villains. Now, the thing about those two characters is they're not going to be the meta on Universal Supervillain Day because Null and Loki are. Loki is going to be the meta for the burn season, and maybe Null if you're doing a little switching around, doing some things. But those two really are the big dogs. They just score insane scores. However, Proxima will be a must-have for that because of her passive, because of this increased damage dealt to, damn, it's always a uniform effect. I always forget. But because of her passive, the increased damage dealt to supervillain or superhero by 40% and supervillain by 35%, and this applies to all villain allies, she is going to be an amazing support for Universal Supervillain Day. And for Female Supervillain Day, again, for the same reason, she's going to be an amazing support. Not to mention that her leadership, this ignore target dodge rate and increase critical damage, is actually massive because the actual meta for that day is Supergiant. Yeah, I know it's really difficult because you have so many characters that are so useful right now from this update. But Supergiant does score the most, but she does need a rage. And with this leadership, having this increased critical damage by 30% and ignore dodge, especially during the paralysis season where the beast increases its dodge, this will be massive. I mean, you can use Proxima instead of Supergiant if you're not looking for the max score. I mean, Supergiant will need a rage or maybe even a mighty CTP of judgment. So these are things to keep in mind. If not, then you're going to want to rage on Proxima. And that's another thing to think about. All these characters are proc friendly also. But if you're trying to optimize them for ABX, a rage for Proxima is definitely going to be the best. In fact, a rage for all of them would be the best, except for Supergiant, where a mighty CTP of judgment would be the best. I'm not sure if a regular CTP of judgment would be better than a rage, but a proc won't do it if you're looking for the highest score in ABX. So that's something to think about. So Proxima is already becoming a massive support in ABX for actually 3 days. Female Supervillain Day. I'm sorry, 2 days. Female Supervillain Day and Universal Supervillain Day. And then we get into Speed Supervillain Day where Corvus actually shines. And this guy is the absolute meta for that day. He does have silence and paralysis on his skills, but you're going to be using Mystique on this day, and she actually has burn. So he is the meta. He is the Kingdom Come, but a rage is going to be optimal for him. But you could run just a regular CTP of energy and do extremely well with him. And so, I mean, all three of these characters right here are valuable in ABX. It really depends on which one's more important for you. Personally, I think Proxima is the best choice for ABX because, again, you can use her as a support for 2 separate days, and even use her as a damage dealer if you want to for female supervillain day. I mean, again, Universal Supervillain, Null, and Loki are going to be the number ones, but she's going to add support to those guys. And then we get into Cole, who isn't an ABX meta at all. So Cole's utility isn't as good as the other 3 characters. That's the thing about him that kind of sucks. However, where he really shines is in World Boss. I would argue that he might have the most DPS of the characters in World Boss. He is an ABX meta. Apocalypse is still numero uno for ABX. But against Null, Cole is insane. This guy can do like 1 minute stage 9 clears. Just crazy on accounts that don't have a lot of pierce, which is even nuttier, right? That's just insane. So if your objective is looking for a character that can really do well against Null, like super well, I mean, all of these characters can. I just think Cole can do better than any of the others from what I've seen so far. But he is a combat type, and that's kind of the thing that hurts him against Mephisto, because Mephisto is a blast type, and he will have the type disadvantage against Mephisto. And then you have Corvus, who's a speed type, and when you enhance his type enhancement, he'll do a lot more damage to Mephisto. So Corvus can actually be an ABX guy for you. And if you're trying to play against Mephisto and get CCF through Mephisto, Corvus is an absolute god. So you have Cole that's amazing against Null, but then you got Corvus who's amazing in ABX and amazing against Mephisto, right? But again, Proxima is a support for all of these, especially Null, because she has the ignore, dodge, leadership, and again, the critical damage. And she's just an amazing support for this. You get the support passive, and she's really good. She's not the best against Null out of all these characters, but again, good for 2 ABX days for supports. Good for a support against whether it's Mephisto or Null, as long as you're using villain allies. So to me, I feel like Proxima just has the most utility out of all these characters. I think she's really the best choice. However, she's a tier 3, and the other 3 characters are awakened characters. So you use some different resources, Mandalay gems and crystals, to level up those other 3 characters. So you might have an abundance of the other resources to be able to awaken one of the characters. So you might just go ahead and tier 3 Proxima, and then decide as to whether or not you should awaken one of the other characters. And again, if it's ABX, then it's going to be Corvus and Supergiant. But Corvus, you actually get the benefit of doing really well against Mephisto and ABX, whereas Supergiant, man, she really is nutso against Null, especially when she's awakened. The girl is insane. I mean, I would argue that Supergiant and Cole are the 2 strongest characters. I'm not really sure which one is actually stronger against World Boss Legend, but they are insanely powerful. However, with Supergiant, you can actually use her in ABX, whereas Cole just isn't an ABX meta. So it's kind of looking like, you know, Cole is the guy for Null. I mean, that's pretty much where he sits. He's just the guy for Null. Obviously, all these characters can do well in the story modes as long as they got CTPs of Rage. If they have CTPs of Energy or they got proc CTPs, they're not going to do as good because the proc's going to miss on the skills that you want the proc to land on. Plus, the proc is going to get canceled over and over and over, because the way damage procs work is it's a certain amount of attack for one attack. And once they do that attack during this proc and they cancel into another skill, then this proc is canceled. That's why a Rage or a Judgment on someone like Supergiant just works better for the story mode, especially when you're playing on auto or you're in the dispatch missions and you just let it run over and over and over. So that's something else to think about. And if you are using Supergiant or Proxima or Corvus and ABX and you do have a Rage, all of those characters are going to do better in those game modes because they don't have to worry about a proc, because they're going to be using a Rage or a Judgment in Supergiant's case. So I'm hoping this will provide a little information for all of you as to which character you should level up. Really, any one of the 4 are amazing. I do think that Proxima has the most utility in the most game modes. I do think that Corvus would probably come in second, because you can actually use him really, because he's a god against Mephisto, and he's really great in ABX. But there again, you know, Supergiant and Proxima are universal types, so when you increase their type enhancement, they will do a little bit more damage against Mephisto, but it's not going to be like Corvus, who's going to get a lot more damage against him because he's a speed type. So again, hopefully this will help some of you out there as far as which character you should awaken. And we only have one tier 3 character, which uniform you should buy. So let me know if this helps any of you out there. And I do stream on Twitch at Reset. The link will be in the description below. And I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching. Y'all take care and have a good one. See ya.